start out by reading a preamble that we do at each of these meetings here. Good evening. As chairman of the Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen, I'm declaring that an emergency exists and I am invoking the provisions of RSA 91-A:2-3B. Federal, state, local officials have determined the gatherings of 10 or more people poses a substantial risk to our community in this continuing efforts to combat the spread of COVID-19. In concurring with the determination, I also find that this meeting is imperative to the continued operation of town government and services, which are vital to public safety and confidence during this emergency. As such, this meeting will be conducted without a quorum of this body physically present in the same location. At this time, I also welcome members of the public accessing this meeting remotely. Even though this meeting is being conducted in a unique manner under unusual circumstances, the usual rules of conduct and decorum apply. Any person found to be disrupting this meeting will be asked to cease the disruption. Should the disruptive behavior continue thereafter, that person will be removed from the meeting. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their name, please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Linda Murray.
I'm here and I'm alone in a room.
Paul O'Brien.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here and I'm all by myself.
Dave Senecal.
I'm here and I am alone.
And Dave Bowers.
Here with wife Christine, wife since 1978.
And I'm Brad Harriman. I'm here and I'm also in the room by myself. All right, thank you, everybody. Mr. Pinio, do we have a need for a non-public session this evening?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. We do under RSA 91A:3, consideration of legal advice.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is going to be consideration of the minutes. We'll start with the May 27th minutes.
Brad, I have one minor change on page 3, second paragraph, second line. I'd like because changed to but. And that's it.
Okay. Anybody else have any corrections or additions?
No changes here, Brad.
Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of May 27th as amended. We'll do a roll call vote. Linda Murray,
Yes,
Paul O'Brien,
Yes.
Dave Senecal,
Yes.
Dave Bowers,
Yes.
and Brad Harriman votes yes. Next item is going to be the June 3rd minutes of 2020. Do we have any comments or corrections?
I do again. It's just a change of a word on page 19, first sentence. After B, take out the A and put more, and then that's fine.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
None here.
Seeing no other ones, I'd entertain a motion for the June 3rd minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded to approve the minutes of June 3rd. Do a roll call vote. Linda Murray,
Yes,
Paul O'Brien,
Yes.
Dave Senecal,
Yes.
Dave Bowers,
Yes.
and Brad Harriman votes yes also. Okay, next on our agenda is the continuance of the Wolfeboro Town Beaches Ordinance, continued from the June 3rd meeting. And before we get into any of the public comments, I have one I'm going to read into the minutes here. We have a email that was sent to the town manager and to the selectmen here. It's a very short one. I'll read in so we have it on record. Dear Town Manager, Jim Pinio, and Selectmen, I would like to add for the record our family's disappointment with Cary Beach. For the past 2 years, my son and his 2 children have attended the 4th of July parade and come home very hot and ready for a swim. They changed into the bathing suits and drove down to Cary, only to arrive back at the house 10 minutes later. Sorry about that. There was nowhere to park the car and it was overcrowded. They said it was out of the question. I would just add that it is a shame when those of us who live year-round find ourselves not able to enjoy one of Wolfeboro's summer amenities. Thank you for listening to our side of the story, Debbie Hopkins. I just want to get that into the record. So we'll continue with the public hearing. What I would ask the public, if we have some comments on this, is that we not reiterate everything we've gone through for the past 2 hearings on this already. I believe we've had 2 now. We hopefully have some new information, new comments. So that being said, we'll open up the public hearing. Anybody out there would like to speak, or?
I guess Suzanne Ryan here. I guess I'd like to know the status of the Albee Beach warrant article.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I believe
yes.
that the board had received in their packet a memo from me summarizing the legal interpretations, which we've received essentially 3 of them from. They all differ a little bit in opinion. And I think the issue here is there's a potential with no matter which way we make this decision, we could run into some legal struggles. There is precedent throughout the state for making access to beaches resident only. However, there's a concern from legal counsel that practice does not necessarily make that legal. With that said, I think we've gone through the beach policy and ordinance. I think we've received ample feedback from the Board of Selectmen. It has been up on the town webpage. We have received minimal feedback from that platform. So I think we've captured the intent. While we know it's probably not perfect, we believe that we've captured the intent, and it really boils down to trying to preserve our beaches for future generations. And it's our belief as the staff that we have captured that in this policy and ordinance. With that, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So I guess, Suzanne, you're trying to really understand your question here. You want to know the status of the Albee Beach? Is that the one you asked about?
Yeah, it seems as though that was going to be accepted, and as you had worded it, and the issue became on the Cary Beach. So I'm only concerned about the warrant article I put in. Is that going to be adopted, or was that adopted? I'm not clear if you in fact adopted it. So can we set that aside, or are we not done with it?
The way I understand it right now, we haven't adopted the ordinance, which includes all 3 beaches. So the Albee Beach is still on the table here with us, as you stated, and the way I recall it, correct me if I'm wrong here, somebody, but the Albee Beach, the way we had it written in the ordinances, wasn't really being questioned at all. So my anticipation is to have, that's not going to be really much of the discussion tonight, because I think we all pretty much agree that that one's pretty good to go. As you stated, the main contention was with the wording and some of the interpretations of the Cary Beach ordinance about residents and guests and going that way. So that's kind of what I'm feeling is going to be the discussion tonight. And when we do adopt the ordinance, it will be for all three beaches. Am I correct on that, Mr. Pinio?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that would be the preferred method, because if we get into adopting single provisions of the article, we're going to have to go through each provision to make that adoption. So if we can do a blanket adoption, hopefully by the end of this evening, that would be fantastic. That way we don't risk missing any of the articles within the ordinance and the policy.
Brad?
No, I agree with that.
Brad?
Yes, Linda.
I just got a text from Mary DeVries. She's having trouble getting into the meeting. I see Matt Sullivan is here. If he could contact her, I don't know why she's having trouble accessing the meeting.
I'll give Mary a call.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Mike, I see you wanted to speak something, so I'll recognize Mike Hodder now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question. Could the Board of Selectmen clarify what they mean by the word taxpayer in both the Albee and the Cary Beach sections of the beach ordinances? What kinds of persons or entities are included in the word taxpayers? Thank you.
That's a good question.
Well,
I'll try and give you my interpretation of that to start with, and everybody else can weigh in on that. There might be some different opinions here. The way I would understand taxpayer could include a person that owns a summer property in Wolfeboro, but does not have it listed as their permanent residence. For, in other words, the residency, their voting and stuff is done in another town or another state. But they do own the property here, pay taxes, and they would be allowed with their family and guests of their family to visit the beaches. Does anybody else have a different opinion, or?
My feeling is a taxpayer is anybody who pays real estate tax or entity into the town of Wolfeboro, because they're paying for everything that goes on here. Doesn't matter whether you're a resident or it's a summer place, but if you're a business, you are also a taxpayer because you're paying money into the operating budget of the town and for any warrant article.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
Brad?
Yes, Paul.
I don't know, it's just IRS, they're usually people you can rely on sometimes. Taxpayer may be an individual or a business entity that is obligated to pay taxes to a federal, state, or local government. Okay with that.
Hey, Mike, did you want to ask any further questions or comment on those?
Just a comment, if if a taxpayer can be a corporate identity or a business, how does one then define a guest of a taxpayer? For example, the example that Linda Murray mentioned on June 3rd, the Wolfeboro Inn, owned by a corporation, pays taxes. Do the guests staying at the Wolfeboro Inn qualify for a beach pass onto Cary Beach because they are, quote, guests, unquote, of a taxpayer? I think that's the important piece of clarification I'd like to hear. When I wrote the ordinance, or I beg pardon, when I wrote the warrant article, I intended it to only concern people who lived here, or as you said, Brad, people who had second homes here and pay tax here, who, in my opinion, are residents too. Did not consider it to be corporations or hotels who happen to pay tax because their businesses taxed in Wolfeboro. So I'd like clarification from the board. If a corporate entity comes to town hall and asks for beach passes for their hotel guests to Cary Beach and presents a Wolfeboro tax bill, will that corporate entity, as represented by the business manager, for example, get beach passes to Cary? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Do we have any responses from anybody here on?
So, John, maybe if I could, Brad, a question. Are you suggesting, Mike, that we are going to check people's papers?
This is not Germany, is it? I didn't think it was. We have to, in order to get a beach pass, you have to show documentation to town hall to qualify, just as you do for a solid waste facility pass. So if I'm a taxpayer and I own a business and my business has guests and I'm running a hotel, I come to the town hall and I say, I'd like to get a beach pass, and I show them my property tax bill. I qualify. Question is, do my guests, my business guests, my commercial guests also get beach passes to Cary? If you can say, if the board says no, then I have no worries whatsoever. I have no concerns with the language of the ordinance at all. If the board, on the other hand, says yes, then basically what you've done is gone back to what you had in the first iteration.
So let's set aside for the moment the hotel. Let's assume that I'm a guest of a hotel, and I take an Airbnb. I take an Uber, or I borrow a ride from a trolley, and I get dropped off at the beach. Are you going to check to see if I'm a resident of the town? Or do you want us to do that? Yeah. You want us to do that?
Of course not. You wouldn't be doing that for any resident who showed up on foot or on bicycle or off of the trolley, if the trolley is allowed to do that, or had walked in or had kayaked in. We're only checking, according to your ordinance, you're only checking stickers on automobiles. You're controlling parking.
Mm-hmm.
Someone walks in on foot is not controlled. The question
Well,
is
the reason I asked you, Michael, as you said just earlier, the reason I asked you, as you said earlier, this is an ordinance about the people, and that's why I was poking at you for the question.
Mm-hmm.
I said it before. I don't believe that, and right where I get confused here is if I'm a guest of a hotel and I take an Uber and I get dropped off at a beach, then then I can use the beach. I don't think we're going to have, let's take baby steps. I don't think we're going to have anybody, saying, hey, you don't look like a Wolfeboro resident. If I have a car and I am at a hotel, your question is, can I borrow the hotel owner's car pass and come to the beach? Is that the question?
No, I would presume the car pass, like everybody else's dump stickers, gets stuck on the windshield. Unless he wants to loan you his car, you don't get to use his beach pass. My question is, if he is a taxpayer and goes to get a beach pass at town hall, can he get as many as he has guests? I'm only concerned about how you guys are going to define taxpayer and guests of taxpayers. That's the only concern, because by including taxpayers, you're opening the category up to corporate entities and business entities.
I think the limitation on parking passes for the transfer station is 3, isn't that right? I think it's 3.
Yes,
So-
but there's also going to be something sold by the Park and Rec Department.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be just solid waste stickers. It also, you could go get one of these passes from Park and Rec.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I just got one thing. I'll wait a little bit. I think we pretty much really addressed the last couple of meetings about the pedestrian coming into the beaches, that we weren't going to even concern ourselves with that at all. So I think we've all agreed to that in our past discussions, that anybody that walks to the beach or doesn't come by car, they're not going to be hassled. They're not going to be checked. It's not going to be, enforced that way at all. It's just strictly to park the cars in the parking lot. And that's what we're talking about here. I'll weigh in with my opinion a little bit on the taxpayer versus motel, hotel thing here. My interpretation from our discussions, the way I perceive this is that the hotels, motels, guests would not be allowed to go to get a pass for Cary Beach. They could go to Albee Beach or obviously Brewster Beach, which is open to the public. Now, in some cases, you're going to find some of these property owners would have their property listed as their business or whatever. There might be a corporation that owns it, but it's owned by a small corporation, family owned. And I would, in my interpretation, they would be allowed to come in with their family and a guest of theirs staying at their house or whatever there.
Sure.
But my interpretation or my desire for the interpretation, to put it that way, my personal approach to this would be that not guests of hotels, motels, B&Bs, that such, paying guests would not be allowed to get a pass for Cary Beach. I'll let the other board members weigh in on their interpretation too.
Yeah, that's the way I feel too, Brad. I think we're trying to control the number of people by the number of cars, and not necessarily the walk-ins.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Pinio.
Yeah, I think that if we look at the proposed beach policy, we've sort of captured that under the residency restrictions and pass instructions. Under bullet point number 3, it states, beach passes shall be available to the following only: Wolfeboro residents, taxpayers, their families, and guests. Albee Beach guests are defined as overnight guests at any licensed hotel, motel, inn, boarding house, campground, lodging house, bed and breakfast, or housekeeping cottage situated in Wolfeboro. Cary Beach guests are defined as guests of Wolfeboro residents and taxpayers. Passes are available with a maximum of 2 passes per household to all town residents, property owners at no cost. Replacement passes shall be available at a cost of $5 apiece. So I think we've captured some of this in the actual policy, which is supporting the ordinance.
So Jim, those are 2 in addition to the 3. You can get it for the transfer station, a total of 5. Is that right?
You can. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any comments here on the board? Anybody from the public want to weigh in or ask some more questions?
Yeah, I guess I would, just one, one quick one. Is the board gonna set some sort of, send some sort of a letter to the hotels and so forth as to how they apply for passes to Albee Beach? Some sort of a cordial type, this is how you do it. And this is where you get your pass, your day pass, or you've got, there's no policy or no practice or no application that I know of that you've got set aside for the hotels. Whether they get whether they have like 5-day passes and I don't know how you're gonna handle that. And I think you need to direct the Parks and Recreation if they're gonna be the ones handing them out.
And we're gonna have to have 2 different colored passes, because the passes that go to Albee Beach cannot be used at Cary. And when we send, and if we decide to send out a letter to the hotels, we need to inform them that they cannot go to Cary Beach. They're able to go to these and their guests can, but they cannot go there. But I think, and Christine's on, I think we were talking about different colored pass or something written on it.
Yes, so we already have the passes. They are a laminated plastic pass. We've already communicated with the hotels. We got their number. So basically, we're gonna give them a pass for each guest hotel room. And they are to manage it. The first pass is free, and then after that, if they need to replace them, they'll have to pay for them. But for the most part, we're working with them. We've started reaching out to get numbers so we know. I believe that pass says guest on it. Versus the other one, which is numbered. And Justin, I can't remember what that one says. Just, does it say resident or does it say? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so the regular resident passes are, one, they're yellow, they're white with a yellow stripe on them. They say Wolfeboro resident. The hotels that we would be giving out to, or the passes we'd be giving out to the hotels, have a purple stripe down the side and say guest on them, so we can distinguish the two when people are coming in.
Okay.
And we have been talking to them, but we didn't have anything specifically to share yet, just because we were waiting for this meeting for the final information to let them know.
Thank you, Christine and Justin.
Just-
Suzanne,
Yeah, just
go ahead.
trying to fill in the blank. Yeah, just trying to fill in the blanks. You folks have the. You folks have the literature, but I was just trying to get a sense of what how this was going to work.
Mary, that's your microphone, just as a heads up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can call into my phone if I know this isn't the optimum audio. Can you hear me though?
Yeah, right now we have Suzanne talking. Could you hold on just a minute till we're all set with her? Then I'll
Yes.
recognize you. Is that okay?
Yeah, no. Thank you. Thank you.
Suzanne.
You've kind of filled in you filled in the blanks pretty well. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Suzanne. Okay, Mary, we got you on now. Are you still with us here?
Yes, thank you. I apologize. I joined the meeting a few minutes after it opened on this discussion. So my question is, have you considered the letter that the town of Wolfeboro appointed Economic Development Committee submitted to the Board of Selectmen on this subject?
I
didn't see
see.
it come through to the board. I haven't seen it come
Yeah.
to the board. Matt, did you move it forward?
No, I did not, because it required some amendments. So after the vote, it needed to be finalized, and I did not receive a final copy of it. But I'll take some partial responsibility for not following up. But we needed to sign off on it finally.
So I would suggest that the Board of Selectmen consider that. It is a town-appointed committee, and there was a full discussion and a strong vote in agreement on this subject and suggesting comments on it. I apologize. I take part in that too. I'm sorry to hear that the Board of Selectmen did not have that letter prior to now.
Mary, can you tell what the 2 points really were?
I would be glad to convey the substance of it. I do not have a copy of the letter in front of me, so I'm not quoting, but the substance of the letter is that the town-appointed Economic Development Committee voted in favor of writing to the Board of Selectmen in favor of being sure that the definition of guest is identical for both Perry Beach and Albee Beach. And there is background or backup information stated in that letter, in that effort or suggestion.
Okay, was there another issue or point from the EDC on Mary besides the definition of guests and with taxpayers and stuff? Or was that the main one?
Well, I'm being very cautious here to not speak as in one member of the committee. So please respect that. I would say that it is a grave concern that the lodging properties, who are one of the largest taxpayers in the town of Wolfeboro, would be faced with telling their guests that, yes, you can use one beach, but the town of Wolfeboro is saying you can't use all the beaches. And why is that? There's no, the Economic Development Committee has not seen evidence or any statement that relays the why, the definition of why that is. And that we're seeing that the town of Wolfeboro would be basically saying there are certain taxpayers who cannot use a certain beach, and that would not address what we have heard earlier from the Board of Selectmen as a concern to the quantity or the number of people at beaches. So those two items conflict with one another. I think I'm speaking fairly for the town-appointed Economic Development Committee, and there are members of that committee who, or members of the Board of Selectmen who also represent themselves on that committee, so they may want to add to that.
I'm on the EDC committee, and you know my position on it's not equitable to all taxpayers. I feel it also is a very poor ordinance for a town whose economy is driven by our tourist industry. And I think that's really what was coming out of that EDC. This letter was put together without me being part of it. It came written to the EDC. So I was not part of the drafting or anything related to it. But that's where I believe. I believe it's not equitable. I think the overnight guests that come to those hotels and motels, sleep overnight, spend money in our downtown, and go to our restaurants. And that is a large economic driver of this town. So I believe that it is not equitable to do that. I may be in the minority, but I think that's where the members of the EDC were coming from.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Mike.
Mr. Chairman, you said at the beginning you didn't want to rehash material that we've gone over twice before, and we're doing that now. I'd just like to say only briefly that the time for opposition to this beach ordinance was when it was in the form of a warrant article back in March, and the handful of people on the EDC, some of whom may have a commercial interest in changing the wording of the warrant article, are somewhat outnumbered by the several hundreds of people who voted for the warrant article, knowing exactly what it meant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
Yes, Mary.
thank you. None of that I have conveyed on behalf of the Town of Wolfeboro appointed Economic Development Committee has been presented to the Board of Selectmen in the past. And also, none of this is relative to the vote in March. This is all about the Board of Selectmen creating a new ordinance in response to a vote in March. So it's all up to the Board of Selectmen. This is new information, and I would like to also put on record to clarify that there is not a member of the town-appointed Economic Development Committee who is a lodging property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Brad, I'd like to
Mike
move the
again.
question.
We don't have a we don't have a motion here yet to move on or anything, the way I see it, so I'll hear a couple more comments and then we'll,
Come on, Brad.
Mike, you had your hand up one more time?
No, thank you, Brad. I'll concede to Dave.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that said, I'm gonna close the public hearing. So now, board members, I think it's pretty much, we know what the issue we need to decide on is gonna be our interpretation of, between the Cary and the Albee Beach residents and taxpayers is gonna be our main issue to decide on and vote for on the ordinance here, so. A little deliberation, then we'll move on, try and get a motion on the floor, so. Do we have anything else to say? Paul?
I think that we shouldn't spend a whole bunch of time trying to have different definitions of what a taxpayer is. Taxpayer is a business entity or a human being who pays taxes to a government, whether it be state, federal, or local. I don't think we should have different definitions of what a guest is. If you look at Webster's and you look at the wikis out there, a guest is a person who is invited to your home. It could be a lodger, it could be anybody, but a guest should be the same definition across all. So I don't think it's, I don't know who mentioned it, but I don't think it's wise for us to have, well, that's a different definition of guest if you're going in that direction and a different definition if you're going in that direction. So I like the idea of having beach passes that are unique to one beach versus the other, but I'm not gonna agree that we need to have different definitions of guests or different definitions of taxpayers.
Okay.
So let the cards fall where they fall.
Yep.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the beach policy.
Aren't we, Dave, adopting a ordinance, chapter 16 of the town ordinance?
Yeah.
Sections 1 through 8.
That's what Dave said. He wants to adopt chapter
That's what
16 of the town.
That's what I'm saying.
Whatever number you want on it, I don't care. Let's get this thing moving. I think we've taken way too much time on it.
Do I have a second to the motion?
That's my motion.
Do I have a second for the motion?
Okay.
I'll second it to get it on the floor. A motion and a second to approve the amendments of the Wolfeboro Beaches ordinance related to section 16, 1 through 8. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Linda Murray,
No,
Paul O'Brien,
No,
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Dave Bowers,
No.
and Brad Harriman votes yes. So adoption of the ordinance as presented right now fails by a vote of 3-2.
Brad, I'd make a motion that we accept the ordinance with having the same definition for guests for all 3 beaches.
I'd second that.
We have a motion and a second to adopt, to approve the amendment, how we want to word this, to approve the amendments of the Wolfeboro Beaches ordinance related to 16, 1 through 8 with Albee and Cary Beach being treated the same. Is that correct, Linda?
The definition of guest being the same.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that?
Brad, will you entertain?
We've closed it. We're down. We're not in public anymore. The public hearing's closed. This is just the board now. Thank you.
Okay,
So we'll have a roll call vote on that motion. Linda Murray,
Yes,
Paul O'Brien,
Yes,
Dave Senical,
No.
Dave Bowers,
Yes.
and Brad Harriman votes no.
That wasn't the intent.
So that motion passes 3-2. Okay, thank you. We got through that anyway. Okay.
It's not often we have a division like that.
No, it isn't, is it? Okay, next on our agenda is temporary
what-
event permits.
Can I ask what that means? I know public session is closed, but so what does that vote that you just took mean to the public? Do we have a beach policy or not?
We have a beach policy, yes.
Okay, and the only difference is that Cary Beach is the same as Albee Beach? Is that what it was?
The definition of guests and taxpayers and residents is going to be treated identical to both beaches.
Okay, thank you.
But to be clear, you need to get a parking sticker. There's only 8 that you possibly can get.
Okay,
and
we're going to move on now. We're done with this, so we're going to move on now. Temporary event permit from Joyce's Craft Shows Productions to host 3 arts and crafts festivals at Clark Park on the following dates: July 10th through 12th, set up after 6 p.m. on the 9th, July 24th through the 26th, setting up on the 23rd, and August 14th, 16th, setting up on the 13th. Show times will be 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday. Mr. Pinio, are you going to present this, or do we have somebody to present this to us?
Yes, I
So,
do.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, this is Joyce Endy. And I have talked with Mr. Pinio, and it was decided that a better location would be the Nick for the shows that were previously held in past years at Brewster Academy. They'll be held at the Nick, whereas there would be more room for social distancing, and it would be better entrance and exit at the Nick versus Clark Park. There was a little bit of confusion, and I thought that Clark Park would be a better location than Nick initially, because it was closer to Brewster Academy where the fairs had been previously held. But the Nick would be a much better venue because it's more spacious. And as I said, the traffic situation would be a lot better. So I subsequently filled out another application and brought it to Mr. Pinio at the town hall for the Nick. So that should also be in your possession.
Okay,
so,
thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, follow up on this?
Yes.
Yeah, so you may recall that Brewster Academy was at our meeting back in May relative to this event. Subsequently, Brewster Academy is trying their best to keep their campus as sterile as possible for bringing their students back this coming summer into fall. As a result, Ms. Endy put in a request for Clark Park, as she indicated, which resulted in a learning curve that that's not necessarily permitted at that location. At which point we reached out to Ms. Endy, advised her that this would not work at that location, and she subsequently has obtained permission to utilize the facility at the Nick. The Nick is supportive of the event. The problem lies with the fact in the noticing that needs to take place. We cannot provide 5 days notice for the temporary event public hearing because we just received the documents, I believe, on Monday from Ms. Endy. So what we're suggesting at this point is that Ms. Endy will be at the July 1st board meeting for a public hearing relative to this, so that if anybody has any concerns, they can air those at that time. However, this is the same event which Miss Endy has held in the past. It's the same event which was approved to be on Brewster Field, the Wolf Field, this summer. It's just really a change in venue. So everything is really still very similar, other than the change of venue, and we've got a notice of public hearing. So if any abutters have any concerns, they can air those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pinio.
Yes,
Okay,
thank
so
you, Mr.
I guess, yeah, so I guess, Joyce, you understand that we'll have to hear this on July 1st then, and to get our notices out in the time frame that we need to for a public hearing. And
Right, I
assume,
do understand that. I wondered if any exception could be made, just because I need to advertise the fair, you know, to make it well attended. Whereas it was approved, as Mr. Pinio said, the fairs were approved by you for Brewster Academy. It's the same event, and I'm just looking for a substitute location. So I wouldn't think there would be any problem, you know, in that regard. So I guess I was just hoping that you might show me some kindness and some understanding this one time. I would have given sufficient notice, but I just found out, you know, it all happened so quickly that I wasn't able to get the 5-day notice that you like to have.
it's not so much that we like to have it. I think we're actually required by RSA to have these notices out at that time frame.
Okay.
So as much as we'd probably feel sympathetic with you on this here and stuff, I don't believe we have any ability for any leniency or you know, to make special exception on stuff like that.
Okay.
Would I be correct on that, Mr. Pinio? Or?
Mr. Chairman, I think you're correct. I mean, if we were to do this, it would create a whole slew of problems going down the road. I'm sympathetic, Miss Endy. I think she's done an excellent job, but we're bound by our rules, and this is a little bit of a unique situation, and I see that Linda does have her hand up as well.
I just was wondering whether we could have a meeting, instead of waiting for July 1st, we could notice this event, and I believe we could do it in a daily newspaper. We are not required to do it in the Granite State News. At times we've done it in the Union Leader or one of the other Rochester paper, and meet quickly to have a hearing and let her get on with advertising. I think we can't do it tonight, but I'd be willing to make some accommodations for next week to make that happen for her.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'd go along with that. Would the rest of the board members be good with that?
Sure.
Brad?
Yes, Amy.
So I just want to let you know that I've already sent the permit through the staff and they've approved the revision in location. And I have an email from Holly Williams, so it is ready. It's ready to go to the selectmen if you wanted to look at it quicker.
Brad, I agree
So
with Linda. This is, you know, the pandemic has done screwy things to everybody, and we need to, and we don't want to mess around with the rules, because Jim's right, we would create all kinds of screwy stuff. But we have somebody who's trying to get a fair out the door, trying to do the right thing. I look over the document here, everything appears to be approved. It's just the venue all of a sudden got changed.
Yes.
Why don't we notice it and put it out and get together next week and try to get that done?
Yep, I agree. I think we could definitely get together next Wednesday. We'll get this advertised and get this housekeeping measure done. And
does that work for you, Joy?
Yes, that's so wonderful. Is there anything that I need to do additionally here to help expedite this?
I think the person who answers that question probably is Amy, who just went to Plaid. I mean, she makes sure that all of our applications, your applications are good. Amy, are we good to go, subject to just change of venue?
Yep, she's all set. So I'm just gonna, I can create a packet for that right away. Her insurance, her map, everything's there.
Yep.
All we did was
Thank
change the,
Oh, you people have made my day. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, and good luck with this, with this. Mr. Pino, does that all
Yeah.
work for you too?
Yeah,
Yes.
this work.
Okay.
So so it looks like it, approved, but I'll know for sure next week. Is that correct?
Could you say that again, please?
I'm sorry. So, I will know, if I'm approved, but I need to go through this next step and then I'd hear from Amy next week. Is that how that would work?
Yeah, you'll get information from the town of, that this will be similar to what tonight's setup was, but it'll be for, obviously, for the new venue. We'll have the public hearing. You can talk about your event to the public and stuff. We'll open up a public hearing, then we'll have our vote on it and everything, so.
And, excuse me, when would that be? When would the public hearing be again?
Next Wednesday.
Did you say that again?
June
When would it be?
624.
Yeah, be a week from tonight.
Okay, at the same time. Thank you
Yep,
so very much.
6:30, yes.
Thanks, Joyce.
Yes, thank you
Okay,
so
thank
very
you.
much. And I'm going to hang up now. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Public,
You need a
yes,
motion
Linda.
to table this one that's on our agenda.
Could you say that again, Linda? I didn't
Do
catch
you
that.
want a motion to table the public hearing that's on our agenda? If you do, I move that.
Well, I don't think we ever had the public hearing because we never opened it.
Okay,
We talk
whatever.
about, I think we're just gonna advertise and actually have a whole new operation next week.
Yeah.
The way I see it,
Okay.
Sounds good.
okay?
Mhm.
All right, next on our agenda is public input, limited to 3 minutes per person, not to exceed 15. Do we have anybody out there who wants to speak to us?
Brad, this is Suzanne.
Suzanne,
Yeah.
hi Suzanne.
Hi. There may have been some mix up about, I wish to have spoken to the board about the stewardship of Albee Beach. Would you prefer that I do it at the end under other business, or I'm kind of worn out with this subject, but I think there's one issue that could be handled, and I would leave the other issues to another time. You want me to do it at the end? I'm fine with that.
Yeah, can we do that at the end? In case it gets a little
Sure.
lengthy, we get on with our meeting here and stuff, and get other people through here and,
Yeah.
okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, John Sims.
Mr. Sims, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Board, and my name is John Sims, and I represent the Lakes Region Model Railroad Museum. Last night, the Planning Board voted to approve our application for the renovation work on the freight shed. I realized this morning that we need to apply for a building permit. The building permit has a space on it for the owner to sign. And since ownership has been a contentious issue in the last few weeks, I would ask that you empower the town manager to sign these building permit applications on behalf of the town. If you are willing to consider that this evening, and I apologize for springing this on you, I do have some language if that's what you are inclined to do. So I await your response and see if you will allow us to go ahead on that.
Okay. Mr. Pino, do you have a comment on that, or?
What's the contentious issue on ownership? What's going on there?
Well, Mr. Pino, do you have, I'd like to hear from Mr. Pino first before we get into that part. Jim, do you have a comment on that, or how we should proceed?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I received this notification from Mr. Sims this morning. I advised him that while he could bring it up in public input, I did not necessarily know if the board would react or make a motion. I believe this afternoon I did receive a copy back of the draft lease from Mr. Sims with some amendments, and I think that as well needs to be reviewed by the team that has been working on that. However, if the board is so inclined to permit me to sign said documents, that's the board's discretion, which they have the ability to do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Sims.
I'm asking for permission for Jim to sign the building permit application and the related applications at this time. There being the electrical, the plumbing, and if the roof needs a permit application to be replaced. It's the permit application specifically related to the work on the freight shed that I'm asking the board to authorize the town manager to sign on behalf of the town. Jim mentioned the lease. I want to be clear that there are two different documents being considered, being under negotiation. The first is the construction agreement, which relates to the time from now until the work is finished. The second is the lease, which would be effective with the certificate of occupancy and would extend for the length of the lease that would be negotiated. That's primarily a landlord-tenant relationship. The construction agreement, which is the one that Jim got the draft back from today, is to do with the next year or two of active work on the building. So I want to be sure that there's a construction agreement that is essential before we would get the permit to proceed, and there is a lease agreement which would need to be executed before the certificate of occupancy is issued.
Right. Matt, are you with us? Could I ask you a question on this?
Sure, Rob.
Obviously, last night's planning board meeting, we went through a lot of this last night. With that letter that we have signed that allows Mr. Sims to act for the building portion of the Model Railroad Museum down there, in his applications for, like, you know, for L-chip and stuff like that, and to be an agent to the planning board and the ZBA, would that doesn't also carry forward toward the building permit application and stuff, or in your opinion?
Yeah, Brad, the letter of authorization that was provided for those applications was very specific that it was authorizing only the zoning board and planning board applications. You know, I think we could have been more broad at that point in time, but I think it was specific to only those two, with the expectation that either the construction agreement or lease would give further authorization, or the Board of Selectmen would take an additional action at a meeting of this type to actually, you know, vote to either authorize the town manager or vote to sign the application. But it was very clear that the authorization, I think, that was provided at the prior meeting did not cover the building permit application because those details were not available at the time of that discussion.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Linda, you had a hand up to make a comment?
I worked on that construction agreement, and there are some issues that it sounds like we are in totally agreement with, and it was to take this time period in getting permits, etc. And so it's been, what, 2 weeks or so, and we haven't heard anything. It comes back today, and then he wants us to sign something. You know, I would like us to get together, and that task force come in and see if we can't iron that out. We're gonna meet next Wednesday anyhow, that we come next Wednesday and see if we can at least gotten the construction agreement completed. I think it's important we do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
the construction agreement will probably take a little time to work out. It would be very different if we could sit across a table and go back and forth in real time. But because of the necessity of emailing back and forth, I suspect that the construction agreement will not be executed for another 2 or 3 weeks. The building permit is holding us up, or the lack of the signature on the building permit has us dead in the water right now. If you would approve the town manager signing that application, it just gets the process going. It doesn't initiate anything. There's another 30 days at least of review by the various department heads, but to not apply for the building permit now, I think is just delaying everything, and I think it's unnecessary. We will work out the details of the construction agreement before the building permit is issued, and I think that's the appropriate point, to have the construction agreement executed and in place. But to make it a condition of executing that agreement before issuing the building permit, I think is putting an unnecessary 2 or 3 week delay in the program. Thank you.
thank you. Any board members have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we allow the town manager to sign the building permit applications.
Second,
All right, Dave Bowers, did you second that? Oh, you did, okay, thank you. Good. Motion and a second on the floor to allow Mr. Pino to sign the building application at this time. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Brad?
Paul?
So I 4 meetings ago, we had 2 select board members get lined up with Mr. Sims to try to, and with our town manager to try to straighten this thing out. And while it's okay, I'd be supportive of having our town manager sign a building permit or construction document. I really think that the select board members that have been working with Mr. Sims on a day-to-day basis ought to be weighing in and saying, now's the time to do it. This doesn't make sense to me. So I'll probably be supportive of the motion, but I'm confused about what's going on in the process.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Linda Murray?
I'll abstain.
Okay. Paul O'Brien?
Yes.
Dave Senical?
Yes.
Dave Bowers?
yes.
And Brad Herron votes yes. So, okay, so Mr. Pino will be authorized, is authorized to sign the building permit for the Model Railroad Museum, so. Anything else?
Thank you very much, board. Appreciate your support.
Okay. Thank you, John. Any
Brad,
other
may I
public
speak
input
again?
this evening?
Mr.
Brad, may I
Chairman,
just speak again?
Well, we still got public input going on, Paul. Do you wanna? Can we get done with that
Fine,
first?
thank you, Brad.
Okay. Any other
Fine.
public input?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mary?
on behalf of the Wolfeboro Area Chamber of Commerce, would the Board of Selectmen be available tonight to provide clarity on the parking ordinance? Specifically, currently in history, we would have a 2-hour parking limit in some areas of the community. Is that in now or not?
Yeah, I gotta apologize. I couldn't hear that. It was kind of garbled coming through with back static, so I didn't understand that. Did anybody else hear that?
Either.
Could not hear it.
I'll try one more time and then I can call in from a different device if necessary. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I would kind of hear you. Go ahead, Mary.
My question on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce is clarification, please, on the parking ordinance. Historically, right now, there would be a 2-hour parking limit in the immediate central core of the business district. Is that in effect now?
Okay, I still didn't quite get that. There's some ordinance you want to know is in effect now, and I'm not sure what ordinance you were talking about.
2-hour parking, I think she was saying.
Yeah, I think, Brad, what she was asking was that on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, they want clarity as to whether the 2-hour parking limit, which I think is the summer parking situation, is currently being implemented, and if yes or no. Mary, if you just yes, was that the essence of your question?
Yes.
Mr. Pinio, would you be able to answer that, or that's a question we'd need to ask our police chief and find out?
I would defer to the police chief who just lit up a second ago. I think he can answer that question.
Okay. Chief, are you with us?
Brad, yes, I am. I'm right here. I heard the question. The answer is yes. The parking ordinances are in effect and they're being enforced. Is there an issue, Mary?
No, absolutely no issue. Just needing clarification because we provide communication to the business community on that subject.
Yes, absolutely. So you've probably noticed Paul Landry is downtown. He's a seasonal traffic enforcement officer. We brought him over from Kingswood. He's a teacher up there. He's also a football coach. He's been through the training. He's been down there almost now for the past month. And we are enforcing the traffic ordinances and the traffic regulations as they pertain to our town ordinances. Additionally, there's a number of other state traffic ordinances that he may enforce in his capacity. Others he may call into a sworn police officer and they will come down and deal with them. I was also hoping to have some additional resources put downtown, but right now that isn't going to happen. Due to a budget frost, if you will, for lack of a better term, that the police commission put in effect almost a month ago. But the good news is that we have some additional traffic enforcement and pedestrian crosswalk safety grant monies that have been freed up by the state. We're taking advantage of those. Those have been posted. So you should see quite a few police officers in and around the downtown walking beats. I know I'll be down there walking a beat along with others that will be doing all of the obligatory enforcement operations that have happened in years past.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
that answer your question, Mary?
Yes, thank you. And
Okay. Yep.
newly
Any other
appointed-
public input? Oh,
Thanks, Mary.
do we have any other public input out there before we move on?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Board of Selectmen. My name is Katie Richards. I'm with Colby Grimes here, and we were curious if we could speak with you about a wedding for August 22nd at your Cape Park.
We have you on our agenda after one more item. You're going to be on our agenda, so.
I'm so sorry, we weren't sure.
We're sorry
what-
about that.
Oh, that's
You're
fine.
on deck.
Thank you.
You're on deck, so you're getting close. Okay, any other public input? All right, seeing none, we'll move on with our bulk vote. we have any motion for the bulk vote items A through D?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yes, I'm requesting that you remove under section B, approvals number 3, 704 North Main Street, request for abatement, tax map 142 lot 9. This got put into the bulk of all of the documentation, and this should have come to you independently. This is a hardship request related to a facility in town which is experiencing difficulties associated with clients coming in due to the COVID crisis. The assessor has evaluated it, and he's requesting to reach out to the business and obtain some more financial information to provide information to the Board of Selectmen so they can make a decision on what to go forward with this. So this item should be removed and discussed separately.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Pino. So I'd entertain a motion to remove item B3 under approvals. Tax map 142 lot 9. Could I have a motion to that effect?
Moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to remove that document from the bulk vote. Have a roll call vote. Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien,
Yes.
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Dave Bowers,
I think Mr. Bowers has gone to plaid.
okay, and Brad Harriman votes yes. So we'll remove that item from the bulk vote. Now I'd entertain a motion on the bulk vote as amended.
So moved.
Second.
A motion second to approve the bulk vote. Do roll call vote. Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien.
Yep.
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Dave Bowers, back yet? Brad Harriman votes yes. Okay.
Still going to plaid.
So, Mr. Pino, are we going to look at this one at another meeting, or did you want to bring it up right now after this?
Yeah, I think we can get this through pretty quickly. What the Mr. Haywood, the assessor, is recommending is he's come up with a Town of Wolfeboro financial form regarding a hardship abatement. He's proposing to send this to the property owners to fill out so that you, as the Board of Selectmen, can make a decision on this hardship relative to COVID-19 and what this occupancy is experiencing for business loss. So with your permission, I will have the assessor go ahead with that
Okay.
form.
All right.
You need a motion, Brad?
Yeah, we probably ought to do it to get it in the books the right way. So yeah, I didn't take a motion on that, Dave.
Okay, I'll move that our assessor be given permission to send out the paperwork to this tax map 142 lot 9.
I'll second it.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Linda Murray? Paul O'Brien?
Yes.
Dave Senical?
Yes.
Dave Bowers? Brad Harriman votes yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now we can move on to new business. Kate Park wedding request, Richards Grimes. Are you folks still with us tonight?
Yes, we are, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for your time. We're very honored to be invited to this meeting tonight. It's actually my first town meeting I've ever attended, so thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome. So, I'll basically just read this in, so we are, well, no, we're talking about so the public hears it. Ms. Richard called to request the use of Kate Park and Community Bandstand for a wedding on August 22nd, 2020 at 3 p.m. in the Kate Park Bandstand. Should be here to discuss what you are. We're planning on about 30 to 35 people. Is that still accurate?
That is correct.
In a regular non-COVID year, this would be a problem because we have concerts going on, but because the concerts are obviously canceled this year, it looks like you'd be able to fit into that time slot all right. So
that's news. Thank you.
Yep. Do we have any questions from the board members of the couple here?
Just a couple minor questions.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sorry. You asked me that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, here's the other way around.
You can ask us some questions. Go ahead.
I was just wondering what your general park rules were. If you guys could send us an email with those, or if it could be something on your website maybe, just to be aware in advance and notify our guests of any of your general rules and regulations.
Okay, I'm sure we could get information to you on that.
Thank you.
I think there'd be basic rules, things like it's going to be carry in, carry out type thing. Any, flowers or any type of stuff that people bring in, we have to take with them. I assume you're going to have chairs there or anything, or
yes,
that people are going to be standing. So you'd obviously want to, set them up just before, then remove them, as fast as you can right afterwards, and everything there. So, and just also know that it is a public park, so we can't close it. So that people could be wandering around and stuff in there. You might see some people, photo bombing or whatever there and stuff. So just so you're aware of that.
You need to know that Brad Harriman is a photo bomber. He'll do that. Yeah.
Well, we'll be looking out for
you. Board members, do we have any questions of the couple here?
No, it is a public park. Yeah, it's a public park. I think Brad covered it all. Even though we hope and pray that by that time we won't have to have social distancing, but that should be a foremost issue and concern. Yeah, whatever you bring in, you should take out. No construction equipment, so you can't bring in a big truck. Again, as Brad said, recognize that you will have potentially little children running around, big children running around, boats beeping their horns at you, helping you celebrate your wedding. So, and I don't know if Christine is here. If there's anything else we need to add to this, Christine? She's here, but she's not. Okay, I'm done.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Christine. Any other board members have any questions? Mr. Pinio, do you have any questions or comments to us?
No, I believe they've been in communication with Amy, and we should be able to facilitate everything.
Okay. So I'd entertain a motion on this from somebody on the board.
Move to approve the wedding request by Richards and Grimes, and I didn't have the date on my form here. What is the date, please?
August 22nd.
For August 22nd, what time of the day?
3 p.m.
3 p.m. till when?
When would you like us to be off the property by? That's kind of up to you.
Why don't we say, I'll move to approve from August 22nd, the wedding for the Grimes party, Richards and Grimes party from 2 until 4 p.m. at Kate Park. That'll give you time to set up and take down.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're both big outdoors people, kayakers and all that. So the what you mentioned, the whole carry in, carry out policy,
is something we definitely practice. If anything, I carry more out than what I came with, you know, in a good way. So, you know, we do really appreciate your time and consideration, all of this. And we're the kind of people who will be in and out of there, and you'll never know we ever existed. So,
So we
you
have
know,
a
we
motion on the floor.
problem.
We have a motion on the floor.
I'll second
We have
that.
we have a second. Okay, motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I do.
Lulu?
I
Oh,
see
Linda.
in the
Yep.
minutes that there are two things we usually make it contingent upon. One, that they follow any of the governor's emergency orders. And two, we have a note that says they haven't provided us with the insurance certificate. So you need to get a certificate, and I am sure Amy can send that material out to you.
Okay.
So if those two things are, if the contingent upon the Governor Sununu's emergency orders that they follow, I will vote yes.
Okay. We'll have a roll call vote. Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien,
Absolutely, yes.
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Dave Bowers. Dave hasn't come back yet, and Brad Hammerman votes yes. So congratulations and good luck, and hope for good weather.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
We really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful evening.
Okay. Actually, do we have next on my agenda the revenue expenditure report? And is that, because I got some other stuff and maybe just out of order here, my docket, my packet here. So Troy, you're with us here.
I am, thank you. So to talk about May's financial report, where we ended up for the expenditure rate for 5 months through the year should be 41.666%. For the general fund, we ended at 33.419%, or favorable 8.247%. The water fund came in at 39.218%, or favorable 2.43%. The electric fund came in at 26.455%. And then the sewer fund came in at an expense rate of 44.887, or a negative variance of 3.221%. And the Pop Whalen came in at 32.203%, or favorable 9.463%. Thank you. So overall, the expended date was 35.259%, or we're at a favorable 6.407%. That's attributable to, again, a lot of the belts being tightened and really trying to minimize cash flow coming out. On a revenue point side of the house, the general fund year to date has collected $1,907,516, which is $17,531 less than this time in 2019. So pretty stable. The water fund is, when you compare it year to year, is has a favorable variance of over 104,000. The electric fund currently has a negative variance of $45,717, but still relatively close to where we were as of May of 2019. The sewer fund is up by $124,633. The last Selectmen meeting, I was asked about whether 2019 revenue was included in the Pop Whalen number. I have recently got that report and discovered that there was $59,219 worth of 2019 revenue that the cash was collected in 2020, and so therefore posted in 2020. So year to date, with the corrected number, when we adjust for that money collected in 2020 that was 2019 revenue, Pop Whalen's collected $42,694 as compared to $70,594 in 2019. So that would be a negative variance of $27,900. Overall, on a revenue basis, we are ahead of 2019 by $137,996. And Linda, I see your hand.
This I have to get to Matt Sullivan. Dave Bowers cannot get back into this meeting. That was the telephone that was ringing in the background. He was unable to get in. So is Matt still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'll try to reach out today.
Thank you. Troy, I'm sorry that I'm late asking you this. I just got the revenue report for May from Brenda Lapointe, so I couldn't talk to you about it earlier. But when I look at her figures, which she has for the water fund, $514,393. Your revenue report in the MuniSmart has the revenue is $500,477. And then on the sheet where you tally the revenue, you have it $604,988. So I can't get the three figures. They're all different, and I don't know exactly what's going on. I was hoping that I would have Brenda's numbers come in and line up with one of the numbers you have. So I can call you tomorrow and we can talk about it, but all three numbers are different, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, I got Brenda's numbers, this morning as well. And wanted to just make a comment about the tax receipts. She's her commentary on that, but certainly, taking the time to look at what the difference is on the year to date. I don't have a suggestion right off the top of my head because what's posted in MuniSmart comes from her Enquesta imports. So unless there's some sort of break, and that's something we'll have to reconcile out.
I'll show you the figures I had in each one of the reports, and There are three different figures. So something's going on, and I didn't go over all of them, but that was one that just jumped right out at me.
The only thing I could think of is that Brenda wouldn't have the hydrant fees that would have gotten posted from the quarterly allocations. So that'd be about 81,000.
There's three very different figures. So you and I need to talk and figure out why, because what it would help for me that I'd get reports and I could go from one to the other and the figures should all be the same. I shouldn't have one report say one thing and another report say something else. And that's what I'm trying to get at. But I'm sorry I bring it up this late, but literally I picked it up probably at 5:30 tonight. So.
Agreed.
I'll talk to you about it.
Thank you. Yeah, the other piece.
Anything else tonight, Roy, on that? Are you on the expenditure report?
I just wanted to bring up that, looking ahead so far for our tax receipts, Brenda's reporting that we've already collected about 2.2 million. And as at this point last year, we would have collected about 348,000. So the tax receipts are coming in a little quicker than they were in 2019.
That's good news. Any other questions from board members? All right, thank you, Troy. Moving on, you'll be here with us on this one too. The New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank Loan Agreement and Certificate Vote. So, you want to present that one to us?
In your packet, you have the loan agreement and the certificate of vote this is for the $450,000 bond for Cary Beach. I understand that in the past we've bonded after the project is complete. But with the uncertain times, we wanted to bond earlier to make sure we secured the cash flow for the project, as well as take advantage of low interest rates. Right now, we're forecasted to be around 1.5% will be the interest rate on the loan. So that would be around $32,000 in total interest expense. That'll cost us for the 5-year term.
Board members, we have any questions, or if not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we authorize the Board of Selectmen to sign the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank Loan Agreement in the amount of $450,000 as presented to us tonight.
Second.
A motion and a second on the floor to approve the agreement for the bond. Any other discussion? Roll call vote. Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien,
Yes.
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Dave Bowers.
Not here, Brett.
Still having technical difficulties, and Brad Harron votes yes. I just want to state too that in our packet here, it says we need to physically sign this, so this will be in the town hall for us to come in the next day or so to sign this, if we could, please. Thank
Mr.
you,
Chairman?
Troy. Yes, Jim.
Yeah, just a little bit of background information on this particular project as well. Dave Ford has applied for grant funding for this project as well. So if we are awarded the grant funding would be used to make the bond payment. So just so you're aware that that could be something that could be forthcoming based on an SRF loan.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Moving on, we have Josiah W. Brown Trust Non-Judicial Settlement Agreement. Mr. Pino, were you going to present this one to us?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, if you recall, back in April 15th, and you should have a memo outlining this, there was a non-judicial settlement agreement that came forward related to the Josiah Brown Trust, specifically Brown Hall. And in the final review, the attorneys found that there was a mutually agreed upon statement which was missing. And that statement was on page 2, paragraph 5, and reads as follows: that the town of Wolfeboro shall assume no liability or obligation related to the use or maintenance of Brown Hall upon conveyance of same to Brewster Academy or reversion to the trust. This was agreed upon by both parties, and it should be just a matter of readopting this language and signing the new document.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move that we put in the language that was just read, and we end up signing the documents.
Do I have a second? I'll second it. Any other discussion? Roll call vote. Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien,
Yes.
okay, Dave Senical,
Yes.
Dave Bowers. Not yet, and Brad Harriman votes yes. Okay. Next on our agenda that I have is discussion for recommendations from the Libby trustees. Jim or Paul, do you want to address this one?
Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, the trustees had met specifically related to the Libby Museum, and there's been a fairly in-depth conversation about laser measurements. There was also conversation about re-engaging Alba Architects about going forward with what the trustees' wishes are. I've reached out to Alba Architects, and I actually have a meeting scheduled with them Monday afternoon at 1 o'clock. So at this point, I know that there's been discussions both ways, but I think that it makes sense to go forward with the laser measurements. However, I think we should have that conversation with Alba Architects before we actually engage in having those laser measurements taken. So that's kind of where I'm at this point. Also, I would just like to mention, while we're on the topic, and I see that she's here, we have hired Katrina Lennon as the interim director of the Libby Museum, and she's been working at the Libby diligently to prepare for that July 15th opening. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions, thoughts on what Jim just said?
Dave, Brad?
Oh, yep, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so just to add a little more texture to Jim's comments, when the trustees met, we put 4 options on the table. Option number 1 was to simply fix up the place. And at the risk of sounding a little unfair,
I want it. I think I'm okay. Okay, thanks so much. Okay, bye.
Option 1 really was, what we would call just continue to maintain it, not have a strategy for the facility. Option 4, with the other end of the spectrum, was operate the museum year-round, expand it. We agreed as trustees that option 1 and option 4 are not viable at this time. We settled on option 2 and option 3. Option 2 is to understand how much it will cost to restore the Libby, and I'm using my words, Linda and others may have different words, but to restore the Libby and add to that environmental controls, but to restore the building, the structure, to almost what it was when it was built, mindful of building codes. And the next option was to consider or to look at the expand Libby, which we know how much that is going to cost, is $2.9 million. The trustees did not settle on either option 2 or option 3 because option 2 is not known from a cost point of view. And that references what Jim is saying, is he needs to talk with all the architects to find out what the bill of materials is going to be for option 2. Then we as trustees will be able to determine whether we recommend to the Board of Selectmen and ultimately to the voters whether we raise funds and go after option 2 or whether we raise funds and go after option 3. As it relates to the laser measurements, there was a fair amount of discussion at the meeting as to the need for those laser measurements. And what has ensued since then is a lot of conversations as to whether those laser measurements that we've conducted in the past have actually shown us that the building is in a safety issue. And I think where Jim is, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Jim, but where Jim is at is we're not, at least I'm not clear, that spending $9,500 to do more laser measurements on a building that we ultimately are going to be repairing or restoring or expanding in the very near term makes a whole bunch of sense. So that I just wanted to add that is what I recall being the minutes of our meeting. If I've misspoken, Linda or Brad or Dave or anybody, fill me in.
I think you're right on. That's what I understood was what our discussion was all about.
I agree with that.
Yeah, so Jim, are you, if I heard you correctly, you're gonna have a chat with the Alba folks, and you're gonna get hopefully a bill of materials, kind of what's it gonna take to do that option 2, and then you're gonna come back and say, hey, well, you may come back and say, we need to do the laser measurements, or we may not. Is that kind of where you're at?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at, Paul. My goal Monday afternoon when I meet with them, which we just got nailed down today, is going to be to have that conversation about the options, and then have a conversation about the necessity of the laser measurements, and specifically what the interpretation of the 2019 laser measurements were compared to the 2014 measurements, because I don't know if that has ever really occurred. So I think we need some clarity on that. We can take measurements until we're blue in the face, but if we don't have them interpreted by somebody, it doesn't mean anything, and that's certainly well outside the scope of my expertise.
Well, and more importantly, and as importantly, I should say, is if we take measurements, we don't do anything about it, like fix something.
Yep.
And it's a great thing. We spent $9,000 to do measurements, but we didn't do anything about it. So I'm glad that you're moving in the direction that you're moving. Thank you, Brad.
Okay, thank you, Paul. While we're on this subject too, one other thing I'll just bring up very quickly. Last Thursday, we did have a meeting with the Friends of Libby Museum. I filled them in on what we just talked about now in our conversation that we had the previous week. And, they understand that they think it's a smart, came to the conclusion it's a smart thing to go this route here to get this other option. So we have, it makes good business sense to look at these other options. And they're still behind supporting this all the way through. So they did still ask if they would like to have a meeting with the trustees at some point fairly soon to talk to us about, fundraising and moving forward, things like that. So I just wanted to put that out there too for thought that we might want to meet again as trustees in the very near future and possibly save some of that time to sit down with some of the board members of the Friends of Libby to have a conversation moving forward on fundraising goals, techniques, things that we as trustees think would be beneficial for the Libby Museum. So just want to put that out there too.
Brad?
Yes, Paul.
I think the work that Jim is going to do with Alba is going to inform both us as well as the Friends about the direction we want to take, and then the fundraising efforts which would be underneath that direction. So I would think that once we get those data from Alba on this option 2, then we get to make some decisions, and then we can sit with the Friends of the Libby and strategize how we get a capital campaign going.
Brad?
Yes, Linda.
I kind of look at it in 2 ways, whether we do the addition or we do option 2, which is just to renovate the building of the Libby, but we're going to put a heating and cooling system. So I see it as we're going to fix the building, but we're going to preserve the collection. And that's one of the things we didn't talk as much about when we looked at it before we were adding a collection, but really is by putting that heat and air conditioning on, we're going to preserve Dr. Libby's collection, which I think is important for us to emphasize that is really important to at least me as a Board of Selectmen.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. Yep. Okay.
Brad?
Yes, Dave.
I think one of the things we also talked about was something Linda brought up, and that was in reference to the turnbuckles. And we need to maybe ask Alba or whoever, along with the laser measurements, which I looked at, but what's it gonna take and how quickly can we do the turnbuckles to stabilize some of that building? Because it is moving, there's no question. In fact, I think one of the things I saw was that it's like 1.5 inches out of plumb front to back. And that's because of the lack of wind bracing and so forth. But I think we ought to
Right.
know from them too, if they can do something with the turnbuckles, what that'll cost and how quickly can it get done. That's for you, Jim.
I agree with you, Dave. And also there's a 2015 report from, I think, Timber Preservation, in which they put the tie rods in, and then I think they also have some information on how we're to tighten them. So I did go and ask Dave Ford what reports he had. That's something he kicked out, but that's something, Jim, you may want to get your hands on. Alba may have already seen it. I don't know what things they saw prior to putting their expansion on.
Yeah, Linda, you make an excellent point. So the 2015 report by preservation specialist was noted in the Alba report. However, I never had it until Dave had, I believe, forwarded it to you and I, and that report I never knew existed. The good news is we've done a lot of the recommendations associated with the report, short of, as Dave said, the wind bracing. And the other thing is simply monitoring those turnbuckles with either stress meters or some other form to ensure that the building is in fact secure. So I think we've done an okay job at getting to a point, but I think the ball got dropped in getting it across the plate.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, on that.
Brad?
We got next on our agenda for other business.
I got some.
Okay, Paul?
Anybody else want to go first? Linda, you got other business?
I just got a quick one. This is for Jim. I thought we had a request from Bob Spears for a dumpster at Mass Landing and asking permission. And I think he needed it sooner rather than later.
Yep. So there was some conversation with Mr. Spears. Staff went down and looked at the area because there was only certain areas where the staff felt that the dumpster could be placed because of the depth of the asphalt. Interestingly, what subsequently occurred is this project, to my understanding, got pushed back after the 4th of July. So this should be coming forward to you at the next meeting, but the project did get pushed back after the 4th of July, was my understanding, and that's why you're not seeing it tonight.
Okay, as long as it gets on the next agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, Paul, you're up.
First of all, whoever did the Clark House for the painting job, Jim and everybody, it's pretty nice. So shout out to whoever did that, 2 thumbs up and all that kind of stuff. So Friday afternoon of this past week, the governor announced a $50 million fund that was going to be used by the state for broadband in the state. That caught my attention and a couple of other people. On Friday afternoon, Jeb Bradley, John McDonald, Jim, and I had a short conversation about what should we do. Over the weekend, the Carroll County Broadband Committee, of which we are a part of, created a planning request that was sent to Jeb Bradley and the governor on Monday, requesting $11.3 million for planning for broadband across the county. I'll get you all a copy of that for the minutes. in parallel, we reached out to Atlantic Broadband, our current provider, as well as to Spectrum, who is the provider over in Ossipee, but they have access over to Browns Ridge Road. We asked them to quickly provide to us the costs, shovel-ready costs, that it would take to complete their build-out in our town for places like Warren Sands, Cowper, Stoneham, Browns Ridge Road, North Wakefield Road, and other places in our town that are currently unserved from a broadband point of view. Jim and I received on yesterday morning, that information from Atlantic Broadband. We now know what their costs to us will be to do those types of activities. I want to thank Barry Muccio because in addition to the cable company having to do things, the power company, the utility, has to do something called Make Ready. It's a cost, and Barry and the electric department, at least for the town of Wolfeboro, stepped up to the plate and did a phenomenal job. So we now have a pretty accurate idea of what the costs are to complete the build of internet access in our town. I am going to provide to this board a letter that I'm going to recommend we send over to Senator Bradley, who's waiting for it. And hopefully he will hand deliver it to our governor, and maybe we'll just do it to the governor as well. When the time is right, we don't have the rules of the road here in terms of how you qualify for these grants, but should we qualify, we're going to be right there with probably $600,000 or $700,000 of shovel-ready broadband projects for our town. So that's my new business. We're working on with the state to try to figure out what the grant qualification criteria is. They were kind of, not fumbling. They're kind of in a shock mode too, trying to figure out how to get their criteria put together. And as soon as we get that, we'll put a grant application in if it makes sense.
Sounds good. Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Do we have anything else under other business this evening?
Mr. Chairman, I think this would be the appropriate time for Justin Chaffee to speak regarding the status of the Granite Man. Justin?
Thank you, Jim. So this past Tuesday, was it last night?
Monday
night, the task force for the Granite Man got together to discuss whether we thought it was a good idea to push forward with the event this year. We had decided in our first meeting to hold off to make a decision to kind of see where we were and see where the guidelines that the state came out with were at. After looking over the guidelines and combing through them and looking at our event specifically, the board has decided to recommend that we do not do the event this year. Going over the guidelines, there was a lot of things that we just felt realistically were going to be too hard to manage the safety of everyone involved. In regards to social distancing still being in effect. In an event like Granite Man, we have bike racks where in a 6-foot space, there are, five or six bikes. So we kicked around the idea of maybe having less participants and different things, but it always came back to that we didn't want to compromise the event or compromise the safety of the community, the staff, and the participants involved. Another part of the guidelines were restricting which states couldn't or shouldn't participate. I know it's still recommending those from Massachusetts are not in certain events. And in an event like Granite Man, we have a lot of participants from outside of New Hampshire and outside of the town of Wolfeboro. So the board, the task force would like to recommend to the board that we cancel this year's Granite Man, and we will we'll do our best to make next year's even better. as a department, we may kick around the idea of doing something virtual or some kind of fundraiser type effort to replace that this year, but we just don't think that it's feasible to do the event this year.
Yes, thank you, Justin. Yeah, that was well said. Everything we talked about, and just one other thing too that Justin has been in contact with the Dow family, who was the benefits of this fundraiser, and they're very supportive of whatever decision we make on this and stuff too. They're behind us, so I think that was also very important for us to all hear at the task force meeting. So, yes, thank you. Board members, do we want to take a motion on following through with the recommendation from the task force to officially cancel the Granite Man
So moved.
triathlon that we have? So moved.
So
Do I have a
moved.
second? Yep. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Do a roll call vote. Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien,
Yes.
Dave Senical,
Yes.
Dave Bowers. And Brad Harriman votes yes. All right, thank you.
Brad,
Do we have any? Yes, Linda.
I just noticed that the agenda is missing 2 items, one town manager's report and also committee reports.
I noticed that. I was going to do committee. Yeah, I was going to add those in here next before we went to questions from the press. So I'm not sure which one we usually do first. Why don't we jump on to committee reports, I guess. They're in a lot of order, but I'll go reverse this time. I'll start as Dave Bowers. Are you still with us here? I guess we don't have, we lost Dave again.
I'm here and no committee meetings.
There he
No
is.
committee
We
meetings,
found him.
okay.
He's been
We
found.
found him. Okay, thank you, Dave. Dave Senical, did you have any committee meetings this past week, actually?
No, not yet. Tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Paul,
I attended a cyanobacteria meeting with Linda. I'll let Linda, as the chairman of that team, fill us in.
I thought you were going to do it because of communications.
Oh, all right, fine. I'm going to do it for communication. See how she's the chairman. She's just all over. She's riding me hard. So I'm the chairman of the communications team. We have not met. We need to, and Jim is working to help us get an IT resource. One of the things that we need to do is post up information. Sadly, we did have a call form notice from our friends at Parks and Recreation. We did manage to get it up on the Facebook page from Parks and Rec, Town Hall page, and we also got it onto the Wolfeboro Waters page. But I think we need to just straighten that process out a little bit. But it worked. But we need to meet. We need to get more information out there for the people. We need to get more people coming into the Wolfeboro Waters site. It's out there, wolfeborowaters.com. And sign up, raise your hand, volunteer, get yourself aware of what's going on. Take a look at what we are doing, because we are doing a lot, I believe. And with that, that's the communications report. Now I'll turn it over to you, Linda.
thank you, Paul. Okay, Linda?
Okay, yeah, I attended the Chamber of Commerce Executive Board meeting, and I'll go a little further on the Wolfeboro Waters Committee. I'm also attended the Assessing Committee meeting, and we looked at areas where we would test in 2020. We're not going to be able to have the number of teams out there because there are only going to be about 4 kits that we'll have to use. But we were able to find some members and members of the public who will go in and test a number of sites. So we will be doing testing in Winter Harbor, Wolfeboro Bay, Back Bay. The Wentworth Watershed Association is going to do Crescent Lake and Lake Wentworth, as they always do. And the Russ Pond Association is going to do Russ Pond, which it always does. And we think we have somebody who will do Sergeant's Pond, but we're not 100% sure of that. Then the Wolfeboro Water Committee met, and we wanted to make sure that there was clarity for the public in terms of the town is doing the E. coli water testing at all the beaches. Even though the state has stopped doing it, the town of Wolfeboro is going to follow through with that program. I think Christine last meeting told us how she was able to work with the water department to get those samples over tested and back. And that we are also going to do the water testing for cyanobacteria. And the state is still geared up to help with the cyanobacteria testing, or if there is any kind of bloom. So everything is going to keep on moving forward on those two fronts. The Economic Development Committee met, and as you heard earlier, we had a long conversation regarding the beaches, but we also agreed to the advertising budget for 2020. And one of the interesting items that was brought forward was that the committee wanted to spend $1,000 to promote a shuttle bus from the high school down into the town, if that could happen. There was real concern with the number of 5-minute parking spaces, with restaurants using their parking lots for eating, and also some of the other establishments needing spaces from parking, that we may have a parking issue. And they felt that the first and foremost important group to see if we could get on the shuttle and get their cars out of town was the businesses. So the hope is that maybe the trolley will be able to do that, but it's something I think we may have to address as a board to see if we can deal with some of the parking problems we may have this summer because of the changes in the parking regulations. The milfoil today, the company was in Back Bay spraying Procelicor on Back Bay, and they spent an hour in on the Frog Pond that's underneath the bridge back, which is kind of a small little pond back there, very shallow, and we have been unable to really get in there and get the chemical on and even make a dent into the milfoil in that area. So they spent a lot of time trying to treat that area very heavily today. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully we will see very little milfoil in Back Bay throughout this season. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Linda. I had as I mentioned earlier, last week I had a Friends of Libby museum meeting, which I kind of filled you in on already on that. Monday night, we had a task force meeting for the Granite Man, which we just had discussion on with Justin. And last night we had planning board meeting where the public hearing on the agenda was for the railroad, model railroad museum. It got its approvals from the planning board, as it did the earlier in the week. They got approval from the last week from ZBA also, so they're moving forward. And that was it for me. Next on to be town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of items. We are meeting tomorrow as town staff to discuss what reopening of town hall may look like, just so citizens are aware. For those who are not aware, if there's something that you need to have in-person communications with, you can certainly call town hall and schedule an appointment at this time, and we'll take that under consideration. But we are working tomorrow to look at what reopening may look like. We've also received a lot of inquiries regarding recycling of plastics. I had a conversation today with the Public Works Director and an email with Adam Tasker, the Operations Director. At this point, there's still a feeling that there is too much of a risk associated with plastics. And quite frankly, from a business standpoint, there's not a lot of return on those plastics. So right, for the time being, we're going to continue the practice of plastics will be treated as household trash. You already alluded to it, the fact that there was an E. coli detection in Brewster Beach today. Really need to commend the town staff on working together to make testing happen in at our beaches this year. One of the samples did come back above the acceptable range. A secondary test has been taken. Hopefully we'll have report on that in some point tomorrow. As alluded to earlier, I'll be meeting with the architects, Alba Architects, regarding the Libby next week. In your packet, you should have received a memo from me outlining our fire chief has been appointed chairman of the New Hampshire Board of Fire Control. This is an appointment by the governor. So it just goes through what the responsibilities are. And this is a great thing to have our own staff being involved in events like this. A lot of people may have also heard that there's potentially going to be a fireworks display that could be happening on July the 2nd. I received a telephone call this morning from the gentleman who is organizing it. We actually had a very good conversation. I did some networking, and one of the problems we realized is Brewster Academy is working on locking down their campus for better terms and are not going to be permitting a whole lot of activities taking place on their property. And they need to do that to preserve as pristine of a campus as they possibly can to attract their students and the families of their students back to Brewster later this summer. As a result, I had a follow-up conversation with the gentleman, and he made the decision that based on Brewster and not having the access to for people to observe the fireworks from that location, he's not going to go forward with the July 2nd presentation. So we came to an amicable agreement on that. And I believe
we have in the town budget $7,000 for patriotic for that. So we do pick up $7,000.
Based on what I've observed this evening, the board will be meeting next Wednesday to consider the recommendation of the temporary event permit for Miss Aldi. Is that correct? Are we all in agreement?
Yes.
That we'll be meeting next Wednesday? Okay.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that is all that I have got at this point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Piniel. Next on the agenda, questions from the press. Alyssa, you still with us?
Yes, I am. Hello. I have a question for Paul. He talked about the 11.3 million request for planning across the county. And then, Paul, you talked about getting an estimate for the complete build out in our town. And I didn't get a number for that. Did you give a number?
I did, and it's still being worked. The number that we would have to pay to the cable company to do a complete build out in our town is probably somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000.
400 and 600,000.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it, Alyssa. Okay, thank you. We'll have our second round of public input. Do we have anybody out there with us still? Suzanne, I see you're still here with us.
I'm hanging in there.
Hanging in, okay?
Okay, Brad. Yeah, it's, again, it's about the stewardship of Albee Beach. And I have a list of things, but I think I'd like to bring one to the forefront and let the others go for now. But I do have a question for Jim, if I may. Regarding the COVID virus and the bathhouse facility there, have you or your task force made a decision about the showers?
I'm going to refer that to Christine at this point, based on her recommendations going through the task force, because quite frankly, I cannot remember.
Okay.
You're talking about the outdoor shower, Suzanne, at Albee Beach? Is that what you're referring to?
The bathhouse. Does the bathhouse not have showers inside?
No, it's only outdoor showers.
Oh, okay.
It's just outside the building so they can rinse off.
Okay.
There's changing room and bathrooms inside. So we will open up the bathrooms as soon as we have staff on duty. We had finished doing interviews this week. We're in the hiring process, and then we have training next week. So we hope to have all beach staff by the end of next week, which is typically when we open anyways.
Okay, good. Thank you. I don't know if the selectmen have had a chance to glance through that Rick Vandepol's handout that I gave you at the deliberative session, but I would just remind you that he is a state of New Hampshire licensed wetland soil scientist, and he is very credible. And so I'm going to reiterate one item from his report. And it's something that maybe Christine would be willing to work on with me, or something such as that. I'm concerned about the state of New Hampshire DES gave a permit in 2012 to install a pathway, a 6-foot wide pathway from on the beach. The people would stay on a pathway rather than, as they do now, they go helter-skelter, whatever way they feel like going to plank their chair down, they just go. So in his report, he says the allowance of a previous 6-foot wide pathway to the beach, according to the shoreline restoration permit issued by NHDES in 2012, has been exceeded by multiple packed pathways to the beach. So in other words, everybody's just kind of, they pick their spot and they go to get there however they may. So my request is, in an effort to make a first initial step to preserving that area, would it be possible to outline in some fashion a route of direction for foot traffic, whether it be by putting lime down, I don't know if that's allowed, but putting, like they do on a baseball field, they put lime and you go through those two spots, whether it be some little flags like you see where they use for electric fences for dogs, and something that says, please keep on this path. We're trampling down the soil and damaging the tree roots, but that could be argued. But I'm looking for some direction, some encouragement to do something about the first initial steps of good stewardship and preserving the beach. So the other items regarding the septic system and so forth, I'll let that go for tonight, and I'll be back to see you on that. But can I have some feedback or some ideas or something we could do that would be preliminary to get something underway?
Yes, Suzanne, thank you for that. So we are well aware there are some issues at the beach, just with the roots and all that, and we've been monitoring it over the years. I will definitely look at that path. I know the path that you're talking about, we did have it before, but maybe because we are the way we're having a beach attendant and a gatekeeper versus lifeguards, maybe there is a way we can really work on making it outlined a little bit per se, and then kind of guide people. We're looking at this summer more as an educational summer to kind of educate people on our beaches as far as lake life, with duckage, with the testing of the beaches, with just what we do here. You know, not everyone is familiar with it. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to have staff on duty at the gate to greet the customers and then on the beach so we can kind of inform people of what's going on. So I did get that letter. I'm looking at it, and I will be working with my staff on some of those that we can knock right out of the ballpark.
Well, what I'm looking for is some sort of interim management. We've been 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 8 years, 7, 8 years with the neglect on this area. And I'm not sure even that the work got completed as it should have been according to the approved plan. So do you have any objection meeting me down there and we can talk about it?
No, we could definitely do that. Let's after this meeting, or we can just make contact and let's make up a plan. We'll meet.
Great. Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thanks, Christine. Thanks, Suzanne. You have anything else, or you're all set right now?
I've had it. I'm so
Okay.
tired of talking about Albee Beach.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other public input out there tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mary.
thank you. So I'm speaking as a resident and taxpayer. There was mention earlier about I admit I'm not sure if I understood it correctly, but it sounded like someone was suggesting there was a demand for increase in collection of solid waste at Mass Landing. Did I understand that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, I think what she's alluding to is the fact that a dumpster may be placed at Mass Landing. That is correct. There is an island resident, to my understanding, that is going to be doing a re-roofing project, and this is going to result in the need to place a dumpster for the contractors to dispose of refuse, if that's what you were speaking of.
Thank you.
And
So,
Mr.
okay, so
And Mr. Chairman, the dumpster will only remain in place for a period of 1 week. Just for clarification,
thank
it
you.
will not be in place for a long period of time.
Thank you, Matt.
How does somebody rent the dumpster from Dumpster Depot?
And I also asked him how he was going to secure it so people wouldn't bring their household trash, and he had a way he thought he could lock it.
Okay.
So my only reason for bringing that up, Mr. Chairman, is as a resident and taxpayer within sight of that location for I've been here for more than 25 years. I see absolutely no need for anything other than what the town is already providing, which is you have a waste receptacle there, which as a side note, I'm much more in favor of the carry in, carry out. So good for the town for providing that, but I was concerned that there would be a dumpster. And so I think I'm hearing that if there is one, it would be on a temporary basis. Is that correct?
Yes, it'd be there. The way I understand it, be there just for a week or so while the contractor's doing some work on an island. We can bring the debris from the roof job he's doing to the dumpster, and then it'll be removed. So it'll be there a week or so, and that would be it. Be just temporary for his own job.
Which I'm all for supporting a business that needs that. It's curious that they do because I've never seen that demand in 25 years.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Do we have any other public input this evening? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to go into non-public session.
I'd move to, we go into non-public session.
Second?
Roll call vote. Linda Murray,
Yes.
Paul O'Brien,
Yes.
Dave Senecal,
Yes.
Dave Bowers,
He said yes.
and Brad Harriman says yes. Thank you,
Chair said
everybody.
yes. All right, goodbye.
Bye.
Night.